And now we got to check in on the magazine Jacobin because a socialist journalist just accidentally humiliated himself. So Jacobin is this publication. It's a magazine. It's openly socialist, extreme far left economic ideas, Marxist, all of that. I follow them. Of course, I deeply disagree with almost everything they believe, but I follow them and I keep up with their content a little bit. And they just published yet another article attacking capitalism and trashing capitalism. But this article had one problem that is kind of ridiculous to the point that it calls the whole enterprise into question, really. This article was tweeted out by Jacobin with this quote: "Capitalism purports to offer endless abundance, but delivers housing shortages, overflowing dumpsters, and jobs we all hate." This should be your first red flag because there are plenty of legitimate critiques of capitalism. It's not a perfect system. No system is. It's just far better than all the rest, in my opinion. But blaming the housing shortage on capitalism is strange because the main culprit of the housing shortage is the massive restrictions on the supply of housing that are in place in many states and localities across this country that restrict the supply. So then when there's a lot of demand, prices go up. But that's not unfettered capitalism and free markets. That's the heavy hand of government restricting the market and leading to distorted outcomes and higher rents than you would otherwise have. So to blame that on capitalism, we're not doing great from the get-go. But here's the error they made in this article that's just one of the craziest journalistic errors I've seen in some time, and I see a lot of them on Twitter. The author of this article, Devin Thomas O'Shea, wrote, "Take Blackstone, which owns a third of U.S. housing stock. They can create scarcity and set prices." So this is a narrative that you hear a lot from kind of socialist progressive types. Oh, the corporations are buying up all the housing and jacking up rents, and that's why rent is so expensive, and that's why housing prices are so expensive. It's one of their explanations for this problem that I think is basically not real. It's basically an invented boogeyman. But this person claimed that Blackstone, one of the corporations that you'll hear cited as one of the ones buying up all the housing, owns a third of U.S. housing stock, so U.S. homes. Excuse me? 1 in 3. Their claim is that Blackstone owns 1 in 3 houses in America. So much so that they can create scarcity and set prices. Also, even if they did own a third of housing, I'm not sure that would be enough for them to be able to set prices or create scarcity. But set that aside for a second. They don't. That's actually insane. Imagine what that would mean, right? That would mean that you walk down your street and 1 in 3 houses is actually owned by Blackstone and rented out by corporate overlords to people. No, actually, most homes are owned by individuals who own their own homes. As the community note appended to this article explained, Blackstone is the 3rd largest homeowner in the United States with 62,000 houses in their portfolio. But the U.S. has approximately 145 million homes total. Blackstone owns less than 0.05% of this. So they were only off by a little bit, right? Now, mistakes do happen when you're writing articles, but or you're doing journalism in general, but a mistake that big is, one, a red flag that the author would put some information like that, not hyperlinked, not sourced, was that not fact-checked? And also, too, that, like, does this author really know what they're talking about if they could have such a profound misconception about the housing market and you're writing an article in part about that? Like, that's a red flag. But more importantly, the editorial process. Who are the editors at this magazine? And how did they not catch that as an obviously untrue and weird statement? Clearly, they've got a massive hive mind echo chamber here that's totally out of touch with reality. But if this was the only piece of this story, I probably wouldn't be covering it. Just socialist magazine fails again. Yeah, we're used to that, babe. We're used to that. What was so disturbing, honestly, on kind of a profound level to me as a recovering journalist, was the way the author responded online after this mistake was pointed out to him. Somebody tweeted a screenshot of the article and tagged the author, Devin Thomas O'Shea, and said, "Are you stupid? Blackstone does not own a third of U.S. housing stock. How could you possibly write that? You need to fix this and issue a correction." So, kind of hostile, kind of rude, but he is right. This does demand a correction, which, by the way, Jacobin did eventually do. But here's how the author responded. Sorry, King, you're so right. I'll commit Sudoku for besmirching the good name of Blackstone. I think he meant seppuku, which is a form of like honor suicide in ancient Japanese culture. But like, I think that's what he meant. And he said Sudoku, the like word game or number game. I don't know. I don't think I've actually played it, but that's slightly embarrassing. But also, yeah, is that a professional response from a journalist when somebody points out a massive error you made? Sorry, King, my bad for besmirching the name of Blackstone. Yeah, you lied. You published an article entirely based on a false premise, misled your readers, and yes, did totally besmirch this company, which I know you hate companies, but that should still matter to a journalist to be at least somewhat tethered to facts. But they don't care. They actually don't care, as the rest of this exchange made clear. The person who originally pointed out the error said this isn't about besmirching anyone's good name. It's about giving your readers a fundamental misunderstanding of how the world works. This isn't some tiny error. It's like telling your readers that the sky is red or that diamonds are soft. To which Devin Thomas O'Shea replied, most people intuitively understand that private equity affects the way the world works in a bad way, especially when it comes to housing. Huh? So his response is basically that whatever, this massive error is no big deal because the vibes of my story basically ring true to people and it's my truth, even if it's not the truth. Like, no, absolutely not. Get a new career, get a new job, seek help. Because this is not journalism. The journalism is not journalism in here, babe. You're delusional, deranged, an activist for fringe ideas, but you are not a journalist and you're not doing any form of journalism when you openly make massive factual errors and then say, well, it's fine. The vibes are right anyway. And also, screw that company I lied about. They're a bad company, so it's fine to publish false information about them. No, that's not how journalism works. And you should resign from your job. But more importantly, it's not even true that, well, the vibes about this are correct. No, the whole narrative is not true. I'll put graphs on screen here, but corporate landlords own only a tiny percent and are buying only a tiny sliver of US homes. And as a share of overall ownership of single-family housing stock, Blackstone owns about 0.06%, and all other institutionally owned single-family rental properties combined account for about 0.5%. So the whole thing, the whole narrative, the whole my truth that this journalist says, well, the vibes are correct, is actually wrong. It's actually propaganda. It's a narrative not based in fact because corporate ownership of housing is still just a tiny, tiny sliver, nowhere near enough to be setting prices or price gouging people or controlling the whole market. It's not a thing. It's a socialist boogeyman. It's something they've made up or invented. And so for the journalist here to cite that as some sort of justification for his factual error, his huge factual error, is just disgraceful. But to me, it's kind of a microcosm of everything that's wrong with progressive thinking. I'm reminded of the time that AOC famously said, well, we might not have been factually correct, but we were morally correct. No, actually, if you're not factually correct, you can't be morally correct. At least not in a way that's relevant at all to our reality we live in. I don't know, guys. I wish I could say I was surprised to see this from a journalistic institution these days or from the kind of socialist left, but I'm not. This is sadly kind of par for the course, honestly. But what do you guys think? Are you loyal Jacobin readers, or is this your first encounter with this interesting bunch? Do let me know in the comments, and do hit that like button while you're at it.